the role of religion in our ever-changing world? From the News Channel 5 network, this is Issues of Faith.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Issues of Faith. I am Ben Hall. Very good show today. We are talking about prison reform and how should people of faith respond. Happy to have with us Jeannie Alexander, founder and director of No Exceptions. We'll talk about that in a moment. And also the former head chaplain out at River Bend. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So when we talk about prison reform, the need for it, what's your belief here? How should people of faith respond when we start talking about this big issue?
Wow. And how many hours do we have? But, you know, when we're talking about prison reform and we're talking about it from a faith perspective, I think something that is so important is that we've seen the model for so long with prison ministry and faith community being involved in prisons. We've seen the model of mercy, right, which is so important. But there also has to be works of justice. So when we're talking about prison reform and we're talking about where is the church in the midst of all this, we are talking about works of justice, you know, absolutely. You can't have one without the other. And fortunately, from my experience and what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing of the community, relationships that we're building, I'm seeing the church step up and wake up and realize that something has happened here in our midst that absolutely requires the response of justice. And
when you say that, is it when you start looking at the numbers, when you start looking at where the United States ranks, how we compare to other countries, right, is that when you begin to start talking about the need for reform? And kind of clue us in again on those numbers. Let us know about those numbers again.
Right, okay, absolutely. So if we're looking at where the U.S. ranks in terms of numbers, we're at the very top. We're number one, but we're number one in a category that we really don't want to be number one in. I mean, so we have approximately 5% of the world's population here. We have 25% of its prisoners. We outrank, I mean, who are we keeping company with, right? Not Europe. We're keeping company with Iran. We're keeping company with China. We're keeping company with Russia. So if you want to understand what our system of incarceration looks like on a global scale, those are the other countries that you look to. Now, I think it's very curious and actually very distressing that we look at those countries and say human rights violations. You know, we have serious concerns about the way that individuals are treated, issues of humanity and dignity, and yet we outrank them all.
Why do you think that is? I mean, we're not. Why do you think we are putting so many people in prison? How did we get here? Well,
that's a great question. For the past 30 years, there's been an interesting trend in both the United States and Europe, and that trend has been a decrease in crime. Now, during those 30 years when you've had a decrease in crime, Europe did something interesting. They started decarcerating, lowering the numbers of individuals incarcerated. They began to take a different approach to prison, and they started thinking about what actually works. You know, if you're concerned about what is in the best interest of the common good, what's going to serve society, then you want to take individuals who have committed criminal acts and understand why, number one, right? Understanding is not excuse making, right? And that's part of the rhetoric we hear in the United States. And so then understanding how to deal with communities from a more restorative perspective, how to work with individuals who have committed crimes. And so then what you start understanding is that things like education are incredibly important. Things like true therapeutic environments, things like addressing the issues, the systemic issues within communities. So that's what Europe has done. And their rates of recidivism are half of ours. So the good news is that we don't have to figure out what to do, right, to correct this problem. Norway, for example, presents a fantastic model, you know. But in the United States, during that same 30-year time period, as crime was going down, Europe is decarcerating, we're building prisons. And we increased our rates of incarceration by over 600% in 30 years. Okay, so why? And I think the answer in part is fairly simple, and that's money. Prison is big business. You know, in the state of Tennessee alone, the commissioner has stated publicly on multiple occasions that he's running $1 billion business, you know. If you look at the statistics, I mean, there's so much being written about this right now, such good scholarship on it. And when you realize that someone in an urban environment who is poor, who is maybe working a minimum wage job, and you look at what his economic output is going to be, someone's figured out that he's worth more economically incarcerated on the street.
Now that's a big statement, that it's about money.
It's not only about money, but I think it is about money. I think it's also about, I think it's also about cheap rhetoric. I think it's about stepping back, and I mean, this is so important. I mean, we've been talking about race relations and Ferguson, and we're looking at the struggles and understanding how far we've not come at this point. So what we're talking about are broad systemic issues within our society. And you know, that's really scary to a lot of people, because that's a lot of hard work that needs to be done.
The other thing, when you talk about rhetoric, is safety. People say,
right,
you know, I want to be safe.
Right.
And they are concerned that there are lots of people out there that will make them not safe. And if we go in this direction, am I going to be less safe? That's the bottom line concern for a lot of people.
And you know what? I love you've asked that question. Because if you do your homework, if you look at the numbers, if you look at the statistics, we're not buying more safety. So, for example, let's just take, really quick, let's say the case of murder. All right, let's just take the crime of murder, because that really frightens people, and understandably so. Murder is a very particular sort of crime under certain circumstances when it normally occurs. So, California.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. Okay, we're going to come back. We'll take a very quick break because we're going to fix a technical issue. We'll take a quick break, and I want to talk right back on that topic. We'll take a break, come back right after this.